So what we're going to do now is try to set the spatial projection of our data frame. So recall that in our table of contents we have our data frame, and we can have multiple data frames inside of our table of contents, and each data frame can have its own spatial projection. So we're not going to create multiple data frames today, but what we are going to do is take the one and only one that we have here and give it a spatial projection. So right now, if I take my mouse and I roll it out into my viewport and I pay attention to my units here on the lower right corner, it says unknown units. And it says unknown units because we really haven't defined a coordinate system for our data frame. So we actually need to go through and do that. So to do that, I can right click on my layers here and go to properties. And then over here where it says coordinate system, coordinate system tab, I'm going to click on that. And I notice right away these two major coordinate systems that I just talked about earlier. So we're actually going to use the projected coordinate system because one of the things that we want to do is an analysis, which requires, if you kind of think about it, flat sheets of paper. So we want something that's flat. So I'm going to expand projected coordinate system. And then I'm going to look for the state plane system. So this is one type of projected coordinate system. Then I'm going to expand state plane, and our project site in our first example is in Marlette Park. So I want to look for one that is in Manhattan, Kansas, and I happen to know that it's in this NAD 1983 US feet one. I'm going to scroll down and look for State Plane, Kansas North, FIPS 1501 US feet. From here I'll go ahead and I'll click apply. I didn't click OK because I don't want the window to close out, because there's something else that I want to do here. There's actually a couple things that I want to do. And one of those things is I know that I'm going to use the spatial projection often, and it may be that I may have to reproject a lot of my data to this spatial projection. So I want to make it one of my favorites. So if I click on Add to Favorites, it'll put it all the way up here at the top. So each time that I want to set a spatial projection on something, I don't have to drill down this list several times. I have it listed up here in my favorites. The other thing that I want to do is go back over here to my General tab and rename my data frame to my spatial projection. So I'm going to call it State Plane Kansas North. I'm just going to abbreviate it as that. And then I'll click OK, because that's all I need to do inside of that window. Once I do that, I notice right away in my viewport, and if I take a look at my coordinates here on the lower right, I now have a unit set which says feet. So what this means is that all the data that I view in my viewport here will be viewed in this particular spatial projection. So what does it mean if I add different data to my data frame that is of different spatial projection? Well, in the display here, it's going to reproject everything kind of on the fly. But in the background, the data itself will not actually be reprojected. Which means in order to run my analysis, even though it appears to be correct here in my data view, I will still have to go and reproject the original data set, or at least a copy of the original data set, to the spatial projection that I wish to work in.